All set? All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming today to our Power Friday on AI. My name is Bill Watson. I'm a professor in learning design and technology here in the college and the chair of our working group on data science and AI. We're going to start with our keynote speakers, Dr. Bill Cope and Dr. Mary Kalantzis. Both Professors Cope and Kalantzis have been at the forefront of digital education, developing innovative online tools that are transforming how we approach learning with the use of generative AI. They are both university professors at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Mary told me to give the short bio intro, so I'm going to cut it off there. But please give a warm welcome. We're very happy to have them join us.
We're very pleased you invited us, and we were so pleased we thought we'd come in person. We drove from Champaign to here to meet you, and really everybody's been terrific. And of course, we wanted to catch up with our colleague Papa again, and we're sorry he left us, and we will take him back at the end of this.
Nope.
We did a lot of good work together. Anyway, today Bill and I are going to jointly present our work, the work that we've done. If we go to the first slide, Bill, and we have it in three parts. The first part, I mean, we're kind of preaching to the crowd. I can see who you are in some degree, but every day things are changing, and we think we've got a handle on things, and there's a new kind of evolution. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about the kind of disruption that's occurred to our domain, and then we're going to give you a use case. So we don't only teach about the new technology and AI, but in our college we've tried to invent the tools to use them both in the higher ed sector and in the school sector. So we're going to give you a use case example, and then of course, what's the future? And I can see there by the other speakers that you are all interested in this domain and are doing this kind of work. Thank you, Bill. Now, this next slide, Bill doesn't like me using, but I like to use it. Of course, I think visual meaning is very important. But as you can see, for the whole of human history, people have been mostly speaking, oracy was involved, and they were also multimodal. They were making meaning with their bodies, with signs on the ground, with smoke. They were multimodal. And what's happened with the invention of the printing press, as you all know, all that changed, and control around knowledge, and the creation of the university and mass schooling. It's only been 1,000 years, and schooling only 150. We think it's precious. We think it's the gold standard, but it's only existed for a little while. And what's happened now, and you all know this period here has scraped everything that happened here, scraped it all. And now we have access to it in all sorts of different ways and evolving ways. So I just wanted to kind of give us a sense of that we've returned to multimodality, where the digital has opened up different opportunities as well as producing problems. And it's imperative upon us, and you guys know that we address what has happened in knowledge making. Okay, so it's everywhere. We don't have to wait for it to happen. It's not about the future. AI is everywhere in your smartphones, predictive tests, banking, you name it. Almost every domain of our life already, whether we know it or not, in our fridges, in our cars, artificial intelligence is here. So we're not waiting for it to come. It's here. Bill?
Do you want me to get on this?
Yes, but you can go on.
Yeah, so we emphasize the word learning there because what's very interesting is that these are learning systems, right? So we do learning and education. Well, what are these machines that do learning, and how do they do learning? So that's a really important question for us. And the question also is, what are the differences between human learning and this kind of learning, and what kind of relationships might be established? So, let's define what we're talking about. And this becomes important in the last part of the talk, because we want to kind of redefine what artificial intelligence is, which we think is very important to do for education. So the last part, we get kind of theoretical, which was, when Turing wrote his paper in 1951, it was in mind, he talked about machine intelligence. He used this word intelligence. And in a way, these machines were already intelligent. They could already, from the very start, do things which were beyond human capacities. We'll talk about that later on. What then happens in this narrow definition is in more recent versions of artificial intelligence, we have these systems of machine learning, right? And the question is how these systems work and what they do. So when we get to this question of AI, what we've done here, and we've published on this in a number of places. Mary and I, by the way, have history PhDs, so we're kind of interested in the origins of all these things. So really there have been three ages of AI, which are fundamentally different from each other. And our argument is this third phase is radically different from the previous two. But education's been involved in all of them. So, you know, the first symbolic and rule-based AI, University of Illinois, Plato, it wasn't Plato as in the cave, and it wasn't Plato as in the philosopher, it was an acronym. As early as, Plato, they began the Plato development in 1959, and Mary and I have written this paper here, which is a kind of a detailed history of Plato, which is incredibly revealing. By 1962, 1963, everything we know about e-learning had already been found out in this Plato system, and we've lived with all those things since, which is this, and it was built on logical symbolic AI. What do we mean by AI? The first definition, which is the broad definition, which is beyond what is a normal teacher's human capacities. The second thing is this move to data-driven AI. So really, there's a whole interesting history about how symbolic AI collapsed as an agenda, and that's the so-called AI winter. Then what happens is this data-driven AI, and in education, the archetypal example is automated writing evaluation, where what you do is you have a few hundred samples, you get humans to grade them, and then the system looks for things that are similar and then can grade it. You know how it works. Now, one of our arguments is that text semantic AI is actually fundamentally different. And the key breakthrough, of course, is this Paswani article in 2017, which is the conceptual breakthrough. And there's one or two ideas in there, and that's what the whole generative AI stuff is about. Now, what we want to do now is try to unpack what that is, not from a computer science point of view, and but from a linguistic point of view. So Mary and my background is in applied linguistics, and we've also thought theoretically about semiotics and how systems make meaning. So what I want to do now is, well, do you want to mention this?
Okay.
I can keep on going. So one of the things is I want to talk about the educational context first. So one thing we know is, despite what Grammarly says and GPT-0 says, they're not reliable. And there are theoretical reasons why they can't be reliable, actually, in that each new text is unique. How do you actually tell how do you tell whether something's been plagiarized or not? And the indicators they use are actually incredibly crude ones. If there are no typos, that's a sign that it's been generated by AI. But the good news is, Stealth GPT AI, I was kind of interested in this stuff, so now I get it in my Facebook feed all the time. Or over here, Undetectable AI is software which takes AI-generated text and makes it completely undetectable. I dare say it puts a few typos in and does a few ungrammatical things, and then it's solved. So you can buy these. And one of the things that a quote that I like in this Sharples paper from 2022, when this stuff was new, was democratizing cheating. So he cites a piece of work which estimates that 15% of higher education essays before AI had been created in paper mills. So you pay somebody in India to write the essay for you, and it's $100. Well, this is cheaper. So that's what this becomes, a kind of a basic and fundamental problem. And I might say we've been interested in this problem, and towards the end, we'll show you how we've kind of built our own technical solution to this problem. I'll get to that kind of near the end. But it's kind of bigger than cheating, the problem. And this paper on the right, which is very, very interesting, recent paper, is about cognitive offloading. The minute you've got a machine that will do any thinking for you, is to what extent is the thinking you've done the machine's thinking as opposed to your own. So this is, look, we're now using AI all the time. And if you want a kind of a freaky experience, by the way, we subscribed last week, the minute it was available, to the $200 a month GPT package with a unit in there called Deep Research. right? And it's kind of mind-blowing in a way what it does, because it's not just AI, it goes out and searches the web and gives you all the references. And we joke, by the way, we've got a project we're doing which is worth a couple of $1 million. I won't go into what the project is, but we put the basic project question in, and for $2, we got a really great report, because you're only allowed 100 searches a month, $200 a month, 100 searches is the limit, so $2 for the search. And we got this unbelievable report, which actually told us stuff about the domain that we were working on, which we didn't know, actually. It was different from what we were saying in our report. So fascinating. But then there's a problem, because we've been paid a pile of money to do this work, and we've got a machine that will do a lot of that work for us in a really competent kind of way. So this is a problem for education. And by the way, it's a problem for the whole knowledge economy. We're going to get to that. So there's the solution. Were you worried about the problem? That's it. So this solution.
And we are worried.
Of course we're worried. Yeah.
The university is anxious about those issues.
But the question is, how does this define learning? And the implicit definition of learning there is individual long-term memory, right? So don't worry about the image. It's a kind of it's a joke. But what's behind it, which is really interesting, is what's the definition of learning? Now, we live in a world where we have the phrase Mary and I use, these cognitive prostheses, which we cannot live without, right? So if we're excluding cognitive prostheses from the issue of learning, and by the way, historically, the most important cognitive prosthesis was the library. Yeah, it just took longer to go and look everything up and put it all together. So we've had these for a while. But the question is, well, what do we want to define learning as? Okay, so do you want to say something about this?
No,
Yeah.
you're going.
Keep on going.
I'll just do our work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk technically from our point of view about what's going on here. Okay. And our view is this is an enormously consequential set of changes. So Mary, in her big picture history of the universe, her slide number 2, said that the printing press was an important moment. It was an incredibly important moment, actually. Importantly, by the way, it was invented in China, not in Europe. We don't know whether Gutenberg got the idea from movable type, Pixing 1039, or whether, probably he may or may not have, but whatever it is, it's the same idea. But Gutenberg's one became generalized for all sorts of reasons to do with well, I would know the great work of Joseph Needham, who's the great sinologist who the history of Chinese technology. But anyhow, whatever happened, the Gutenberg one became big, but it was the same invention. But the really important kind of theoretical point is it's about the reproduction of text. So everything that schools ended up doing around print literacy, learning to read and write, and textbooks and everything, curricula and all that stuff, was very much centered around this reproductive technology. Now, what's radically different about text semantic AI, and that's what we're going to define it as opposed to the symbolic and data-driven, is that what we can do is it can now produce text mechanically, which is coherent and unique, and it's synthetic. I mean, what we do as human beings is synthetic all the time. This is a machine which can do what humans do in the cognitive domain. So it's the first machine to do this. But one of the things we want to try and do is talk about the ways, the infinities of possibility and meaning making, and I'll talk about what we mean by that in a second, can be tamed in this environment. And the way humans do it is actually fundamentally different. But that also makes AI particularly relevant because it can do things that humans can't do. And we'll talk about that. So the first kind of theoretical question, and Mary and I argue about this, so I'm going to get her to say something, because we kind of don't agree about this, is whether it's just parroting stuff. To what extent it can say things that are new. That's a really important sort of philosophical and theoretical question. This important article from 2022 or 2023 on stochastic parrots, the Emily Bender et al. Timnit Gebru is the quite important woman who worked with Google and got fired. That's another whole different story. And Chomsky also thought that there was nothing in it. Chomsky, as you know, died, but in this 2023 article in the New York Times, he was saying something similar. Now, I'm going to say a kind of an ironical thing about the whole history of this stuff. This article on the right here is by Zelig Harris, published in 1954, who invented the phrase bag of words. So what generative AI does, it takes a bag of words, vectorizes them, and the rest's history, so to speak. What's really important about the inventor of this phrase is it's in this sentence. The sentence says language is not just a bag of words, right? So it's been hugely misquoted, the concept. And what Zelig Harris says, importantly, it has a distributional structure, right? And that article is a kind of an article which says that. Now, Mary and my argument is that, and I'm going to get her to say what she thinks about this at the moment, my argument is this does reconstruct the world in a way that humans like. It is a meaningful set of things that get produced, and they're not just parrots. It's not, what parrots do is they repeat words that have been given to them, but by recombining words, it actually is much more than parroting.
Well, we've been arguing for a long time, and our coder last night sent me a message that sort of agreed with me and agreed with him. So
he's being nice because he works for us. We have a wonderful AI expert who.
The parroting and the bag of words, I don't think we can give up yet, because my anxiety is this movement towards sentience in the machine. And people say, oh, it's going to be able to kill us even. Well, even if it can do that, it's because somebody has trained it at one end or trained it at the other end, or there's an algorithm, and the number of humans involved in creating its capabilities and the latent distribution mechanisms, they're all done by humans, right? And I want to hang on to that. So I want to hang on to the bag of words and hang on to the parrots until such time as there's genuine evidence. And our coder last night said it's going to happen soon. But from my point of view, I still think the level of human commitment. You look at what Elon Musk done. He set up this huge entity to create energy, but he's got hundreds and hundreds of people who are fine-tuning all the time and reproducing different kind of ways of realizing how we operate with this. So I think we can't give up on that and just kind of say it's moved into sentience already, and it is like humans, because the main thing we want to say is that humans make meaning differently and to machines, although what machines can do is beyond what humans can do in accessing all that data and information that's been produced by people to this point. But humans have to continue contributing to it, because otherwise, they've already reached the end point of the content, right? They've already processed it all. So we have to keep contributing to it. So I just want to hang on to that.
So I'm going to tell you why.
But he's got an English background. I have a Greek background.
Oh,
Matters me.
Ethnic reductionism. Ethnic reductionism. We won't have that today, because that's, we've left the DEI era behind. So no ethnic reductionism today. So I'm joking, of course. But no, my argument against what Mary's saying is that what we've delegated to these machines is a degree of autonomy, right? And the word, you might have heard this thing about AI agents. What we've done is we've given them degrees of agency to do things, to make meanings, and it's more than just parroting. That's kind of my argument. Now, Dwayne, who's our AI person, very nicely said we were both right. So there you go. But we know that we disagree. Anyhow, it's an important debate, I think, and it's things we need to think about theoretically and philosophically. Now, what I want to talk about is why I think it does what humans can do. So this is our kind of theory of meaning making, which we apply Mary and I do a lot of work in literacy, as you know. So what we have in the world is we have found designs in the world. Let's take a sentence. A found design has a noun and a verb, which is a kind of things and actions, right? And what we do as human beings is we learn from these found designs to do design work. But the important thing about design work is that every time we reconstruct meanings, like the last 300 words I said have never, ever been said before in human history in that order, not by me, not by anybody else, right? And what young children do even is reinvent the meanings of the world all the time on the basis of found designs, but they do things which uniquely voice who they are, their context, their space, their human, whatever they are as human beings. And these then become traces of meaning which return to the world, right? So there's kind of a cycle there. And my argument is, this is exactly what the This is what humans do. This is what these done
They
machines
can't-
do now
They
as well.
can't do what's in the environment, they can't do what's.
Yeah, okay, you see, this is the argument. I'm going to tell you how they can do what's in the environment as well when we get further down that track. You know, as I say, we need to kind of discuss these things. The truth is, we can't talk about them because we disagree very much. But here in front of you, we're polite. And by the way, this kind of theory comes out of our multiliteracies work, which people might know from a long while back. And we're very pleased that the Harvard Ed Review's publishing a reprint of the original article plus our update around AI and stuff in March. I want to go back to this Chomsky word generative, right? So what underlies that design process? So grammar, you know, this is a famous quote from the key book, Syntactic Structures 1957. So what we do is we have this idea of grammatical utterances and we substitute bits from, you know, nouns and verbs. Well, you can have a dog or a cat as a noun, you can have run and walk as a verb. So what we have is we have this system of generating meaning out of an underlying system. So, by the way, we'll get to the point at the moment where we disagree with Chomsky in some profound ways, but interestingly, what he meant by generative is actually what happens in these LLMs. Now, I want to get technical now, but I'm going to do technical in our kind of textual sense, right? So what we do is we have meaningful stuff that comes into these machines, meaningful stuff comes out, we put in a prompt and then there's a text, right? But the most important thing, and we're just thinking in textual terms, it goes through binary notation. Binary notation is just a form of writing, right? So in other words, it's all writing at the end of the day. And this is what happens. So this is our kind of linguistic definition of what's happening in an LLM. So what we have is we have underlying all our textual experience these days is Unicode. It's one of these invisible things which people don't take much notice of, but Unicode is in fact every grapheme in the human experience, including languages which we you know, linear A and linear B, which one is not translated, I don't remember which one it is. Every possible grapheme in the human experience, which includes updating it now for emojis and all sorts of stuff that happens in text. And behind the block letter A, that's the Unicode notation, right? All those zeros and ones is A, right? So behind all of these things, so all these computer systems, when you put an emoji in your phone and it goes to across different systems, the face might look different, but the underlying semantics is absolutely stabilized. So what we then have in this world of graphemes is we have phonemes, which might include these letters here, ideographs, which includes Chinese and the number 8. And the really important thing is LLMs do not deal with phonemes. So what they deal with is they deal with tokens, which are morphemes. So one of the important arguments that we've got is these are semantic systems, right? They're based on this textual world of Unicode, but it's a semantic system. And of course, ideographs are also semantic, right? So this is kind of, and you know, ideographs actually get treated as tokens as well. So that's kind of the text semantic space. And one of the very interesting aspects of this, it means that math and code are treated like writing. What's interesting, it kind of does, you've got to do a lot of tuning with math because math is not just linear, whereas coding is pretty linear. But in other words, you know, this world, the difference between writing natural language and writing code and writing math is actually indistinguishable because they all operate in Unicode. This is kind of interesting and relevant. Now, do you want to say something more before I go on? Okay. So I'm going to give an example of what we call latent semantics. Latent because the machine has no semantics. It doesn't understand any meaning at all, right? Here is 3 sentences with some AI, the images that we generated. And I'm going to focus on this word walked, right? So walk is actually 2 tokens because we've split it by, it's called stemming. We break walk away from the ED. And in fact, the interesting thing, by the way, and this is apropos of Mary's point, is that everything that's in a token has been hand-coded by human beings, and it's called the spacebar, right? And when stemming happens, it's because a linguist has actually said we can break verbs into past and whatever tense by stemming in this way, and that's so every single semantic unit at the bottom of this system has been hand-coded. Don't think the machine's doing anything; it's all hand-coded. I walk the dog. And I walk the prisoners to their cells. Now, what's interesting about these three sentences is there are actually three very different types of walk. And what we do as human beings is we know this walk here is direction oriented. I'm in a hurry, I'm going from A to B. This walk here is round in a circle because I come home again, and the dog's walking me because it's pulling the leash, and I'm only walking because the dog needs to walk. In terms of human agency, it's a very different type of walk. And this, of course, is walking against, the prisoners are walking against their will, right? So what's interesting is we can, in school grammars, we can say it's a verb, it's the past tense. We don't go much further beyond that. Whereas, in fact, what linguists do in painful kinds of ways is they unpack these subtle differences around transitivity, case, voice, mood, a whole pile of stuff is how you unpack the differences between one kind of verb and another. Now, what's interesting for us is how generative AI does this. Now, this is what we're kind of thinking is its implicit practices of meaning, which is thousands of different types of walks based on the statistical relationship to surrounding words, billions of parameters, vectors, weights, whatever you want to call these damn things. Mary and I work is very much theoretically based on the work of Michael Halliday, one of the great 20th century linguists, died a few years ago. And he has this nice thing of grammar as a resource for meaning, critical functioning, semiotic. So and by the way, the human experience is we have nouns and verbs, which is we have things and we have actions. You know, this is a very, kind of a set of semantic primitives, if you like. So these then lead to some fundamental differences between the way in which that amazing meaning is created in the LLMs and the way in which amazing human meaning is created. I won't kind of go through this in any great detail because I'm realizing we're pressed for time now. But the most important kind of takeaway for us is empirical and statistical, which is a billion trillion vectors between all these different words. Whereas what we do with human beings is we make these meanings, these new designs of the world, theoretically and grammatically. Now, where the theory comes from, this is a little bit more about the work we've done. It's too much to talk about now, about what grammar is. We're kind of interested in this question, but you know, we're arguing that minds are not Bayesian, and that we want something like Chomsky's theory of mind, but without the bioreductionism. So that's a big theoretical argument, and there are some references there on the right. So I am going to go on to part 2 now, and Mary's going to do a quick intro.
A quick intro, yes. I mean, partly what we're all working with with schools. And what we're trying to do is try to understand and know that this thing is not magical. Because some people think it's magical, you know, they don't know how it actually operates, or fearful. So we have those two reactions in our school system, and as you know, in America, the system is not a system for introducing change in any systematic way. So we have to work with schools for whom this is new and, you know, they're not quite sure what to do. So what we've tried to do, we've been working for many years now to create platforms for what we call digital meaning making, right? Multimodal digital meaning. What are the affordances of the digital? And the LMS, the learning management systems that we have, were architected for the past. They're not even architected for, you know, upload, download, have a quiz, maybe a chat, you know, but all universities are paying millions of dollars for them, and we're stuck with them. And schools then have derivative things, digital tools that they use in schools, mostly for behavior management. So you can do drill on math, drill on language, you know, so kids are working independently with these commercially produced things. So we're trying to demonstrate that you can create other platforms, you know, platform pedagogy, which meets the values that really matter to us. So we created CG Scholar before all this happened. We've been doing it for many years, and it's around how you make the machine more human, you know, in the qualities and in the values that it represents. How do you get engagement, collaboration, reflection, multimodality? We've actually, you know, put it into the tool for creativity. And importantly, we need a different kind of assessment. We can't go into this place with the traditional assessments. So we've produced analytic frameworks for doing that, portfolios, because for the teacher and for the student, interactive course design, etc. And now, and this is the bit that we're going to show you, is we've included generative AI. And Bill's going to give you a live demonstration of what we've done, and then I will take you through the components of it, because there's some key issues that we believe we need to do as educators to tame the wild, you know, AI in the wild, to tame it for the purposes of education and the values that educators have. So Bill, if you can get that going.
So this is a new module in the Scholar environment. Thank you for your help with that.
Of course.
Oh, it's gone. Great. Nice. As long as it's gone from here. So let me get that out of the way because I need to go to the other tab. How do I get that?
Pardon me.
I'll go, okay.
Gotcha.
Yep, got it. Excellent, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in now. I'm going to show you an example of what we've built. We're interested in writing, so this is a writing example. This is this thing called Cyber Scholar. We launched it in schools and trialed it in some high schools end of last year, and it's just begun the last couple of weeks using it with our students. So when I go into here, let me just size that up a little bit. I'm going to show you just one work. You can build rubrics here, you can build projects, you can build knowledge bases. I'll tell you what they are in a second, but I'm going to go into one of our students' work and just show you something as an example. So this is a piece of work written by one of our students. I just pulled it out of a hat on station rotation using generative AI in a middle school. And you can see here, it's like a conventional essay. It's got all sorts of media all the way through it. And it's got a reference list at the end. So you just want to know what it is we're dealing with. Now, what I want to do is I want to use generative AI to give this student feedback, right? So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose a new review, because what we do is every time you do a review, we increment it because we want to know the way in which the AI has influenced your work. And we want to be able to compare pre-AI and post-AI. So forget about the differences. I'm just going to go in and do a new review, not peer, not self. We're going to do an AI review. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to select a rubric. And I'm going to choose the rubric that we use in our Learning Design Leadership program, which is around, it happens to be, you can put any rubric in here, but this is around this, oops, sorry, how do I get that back down? This is around, I should use a mouse rather than this, but anyhow, this is around our kind of theory of knowledge, experience, evidence, concepts, theory, reasoning, critique, some stuff about communication. One of the things we do though as well is we say here, you can choose any model. So this is set on Llama, but I'm going to change it to GPT 4.0. But we also have in the back here DeepSeek, which is pretty darn impressive to be quite frank. Grok, which is Elon Musk, if that's your taste, Anthropic, Google, Gemini. So we have all the models in the back. But the really important thing is that we have this thing called a knowledge base. So I'm going to choose now this one here, which is this CG Scholar class repo, which is our knowledge base. I'll tell you what it is. It's everything that all our students have written for the last 5 years, and it's everything Mary and I have ever written. And it's 35 million tokens, right? Which is probably 35 million tokens is 32 million words, roughly, something like that.
The rounded corpus.
Yeah, but it's a corpus. And by the way, our students are all doctoral students and master's students. They're teachers in schools, and they're pretty darn savvy. They know a lot about education that we don't know, and they tell us things all the time about what they do. What I can do here is I can widen or narrow the amount of that corpus I'm going to use. Narrow means it's very specific. If I'm doing something on flipped classrooms or differentiated instruction, it'll really stick to that. If I want to go more broadly across that corpus, it'll do that. So I'll leave it roughly in the middle. And what I will do is I will start a review. So what it does is automatically increment to a new level, and it's now beginning to work on the review. And I'm going to show you what comes up here. So it's already done experience, and you can see here. This is what if I want to open up the rubric, we have a long and verbose description of what experience involves. And we have a long and verbose thing about what evidence involves, because the AI is really good at stuff when you're really clear about what it is you want. And you can see here, there's an amazing amount of feedback here where it says exactly what to do and gives you, sort of feedback about what to do. AI assistant, user citations, improving. So it's mentioning specific references, which are all in the vector database. And what it's doing is, however, there is which could be improved: lack of quantitative data on AI effectiveness, limited discussion of potential negative empirical findings, need for more. So it's very, and the answer is 3 out of 4. We've got this happened to have a scale of 0 to 4. This is a 3, and it explains why it's a 3. Now, what I can do here as well, let me just see where I'm up to now in terms of the feedback. So look, it's pretty fast. Don't forget, this is 35 million words of the vector database, and it's going out by our API to, we set it for OpenAI, but we could have put anything else in. And there are our star ratings here, which is, you know, where we are in terms of the rubric. And one of the lovely things is you can do it over and over again until you get your star rating up to the ideal. But what I'm going to do now is take one of these, and the student can also talk to the AI. So what I'm going to do is go over here. I've got a little sticky here, so you don't have to deal with my impossible typing. This is a lot of feedback, right? I'm going to copy and paste that in. This is a lot of feedback. Could you summarize it in 50 words? So what it's doing now is bang, there's a 50-word summary. And the next thing I can say is, the next one here is, could you explain more about tailored instruction? Because I don't quite know what you meant by that in the review. So bang, it'll explain more about tailored instruction. And again, it's accessing our knowledge database, and look, it's given quite a lot of information about tailored instruction there. And then over here is, look, I'm not a first language speaker of English, so I'm having trouble with this page. So I'm going to say here, could you give me the feedback in Chinese, please? And bang, what it'll do, give it a second. Might have been quicker if I was using DeepSeek. There's the feedback in Chinese. So what we can have is something which is, and what we say about this is, look, this is not AI. This is actually the collective intelligence of all our students and us giving you this very tailored feedback. And also against the rubric where we've built a kind of a knowledge framework. So one of the things is, Mary and I have this phrase, using AI in the wild. It's, you know, it's not very helpful, but if we can calibrate the AI in these kinds of ways, it becomes very, very helpful. So that's a quick summary of what it is we've been building. And as I say, we're interested in writing. We've done this also. I can give you high school examples. We've done this. Now, I'm conscious, how are we going for time? We've got to move fast now, don't we?
And it's writing across the curriculum, whether it's history, math, science, whatever. We're doing it we're doing it with our students. But I just want to take you through the process that we go through. Peer feedback and collaboration has been core to our pedagogy, right? And particularly in the online environment, you need to be doing that. And before we put the AI in, we did peer feedback, but now we put the AI in first because it gives such wonderful feedback. So you have a project which is produced in Scholar in a multimodal kind of context. The AI gives a review, they get a draft. It then goes, it's resubmitted. Then they get peer review, right? And then we have a change note. So we want the student to be critical about what the AI gave them, what the peers gave them, what the value is. We want them to be critical thinkers about the work. They revise, and then they put it out to in a portfolio, and it gets published. So we have this process built into it. So, it's kind of project work. It's all about cognition, individual learning. And on the other side, we have formative assessment. I'll show it to you, metacognition and collaborative learning. So the values that matter to us are in the platform pedagogy that we have and in the tools that we've built. You do need to create very complex rubrics to get the best kind of results around the domain, if it's history or whatever. But this is the most important part, the thing I said about analytics. Assessment always is the tail that wags the curriculum, right? But for us, we do what's called assess as you go. There's no end, and it's 3 parts. You can have any number of parts. We've designed it. You can design it any way you like. But for one part, it collects data on the knowledge you'll produce and the quality of that knowledge. And a lot of it comes through that peer review process. The second part is focus, because if you're in an online environment, you need to know how much engagement a learner has, and you need to actually track it and grade it. And so we have a whole range of components there. But for us, the most important bit, and Bill said this is about collective knowledge, is the degree to which people help each other. This thing about cheating and whatever, we don't believe in that. We say people need to help each other. Peer feedback is helping each other achieve goals. So we actually grade them on the quality of that feedback that they give. So the assessment is based on those 3 components.
I've gone on. I'm conscious we're done with time. So what I better do?
Finish on this then? Do you want to finish on this?
No, I'll skip through the rest of it. And look, let me say this. Mary and I, believe it or not, are giving this talk in Hong Kong on Monday. So what we decided to do was to make a video recording of it. We immediately knew we were going to be in trouble here today because the video recording took 80 minutes.
Bill, can I just finish this bit here? Just this here?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I think,
Okay.
yeah, this is.
No, I've got to, I'll flip through the other ones quickly, but finish that
Oh,
first.
all right. So what we're modeling in the user case study, right, is that it's very important that you can design platforms which can fit into those existing ones that we have, unfortunately. That's what we have to do. So although this is outside of it, we can use it in any learning management system. But the vector knowledge database is really key, you know, and as I said, anyone can produce a corpus which is dedicated to a particular area, whether it's dancing or math or whatever.
Oh, and by the way, what we're building here is a space where the teacher can upload the textbook, the PowerPoints, the lesson plans.
Yeah.
So in other words, then that becomes part of the LLM.
Yeah, so never sending them into the wild because it's a waste of time, quite frankly, given what comes back. The prompt engineering also is absolutely critical. You know, we've all got to become prompt engineers and to create these agents that provide
We need to move on.
students, and then the analytics, which is formative, and Bill's going to talk about these other things as well.
One little example I want to give, this is a crazy example. One of our students said, I apologize, I used the wrong rubric. She was creating a thing called a learning module, learning resource, but this is a theoretical work. And what DeepSeek did, which is spectacular, I got all the words there just to show you the detail. It built a new rubric for her and reassessed the text. That's in the dialog box. This is using DeepSeek, and this is this, which is really, and then what it did is with the new rubric that DeepSeek created, it reassessed her work. Amazing. And then she says, wow, your response truly impressed me. You're very welcome. It's interesting that DeepSeek speaks in this highly familiar kind of dialogical kind of way, but it's also chain of thought. What it does, it built the rubric and then it implemented the rubric itself. Crazy. We've been doing lots of research on this, and there are papers which I won't go through about what, you know, we've been running AI with our students for a couple of years. This new platform is we've just released. And then what I'm going to do is in 1 minute, I'm going to say something about the future of learning. Firstly, artificial general intelligence. This is the Manchester one from 1948, already in 1948, it was finding prime numbers that humans couldn't find. It was already smarter than human beings in its own particular way. And as for superintelligence, of course it's superintelligence because it's every word that's ever been published that's been ingested by these machines. So it's going to be really smart. And Mary might disagree about that, but we can't afford to have that discussion now. We think artificial intelligence is a terrible idea because it's not actually artificial intelligence. It's something very, very different. To use the same word is problematic. This is John McCarthy, who used it as a hook to get funding for a seminar in 1955, and we live with the consequences. What we like is the idea of cyber. And this is Norbert Wiener, the most important, who invented this idea of cybernetics. The cyber is, by the way, the oarsman at the back who keeps adjusting things. It's about feedback systems. So that's the Greek origins of the term. And if you're interested, we have a long history of cybernetics. We're historians, and it was a paradigm that was lost. And it's a shame that it was lost because it's a much better paradigm than artificial intelligence. So this is what we want to have, is not the one as a replicant of the other, but a feedback relationship in these ways. We want to call it cybersocial learning. And it's not artificial. It's actually collective intelligence. It's every published word. It's not artificial at all. Of course, we know this. You know, human intelligence is much more than what can be reduced to binary notation. And what's very interesting at the moment is this rise of contextual intelligence. And what we're doing in our cyber scholar space, the contextual intelligence is actually keystrokes, the way in which you're using the AI. We're about to put an AI helper in that space. We haven't done it yet, but we're going to know exactly how much. Via contextual AI, we'll know exactly how much is the student's work and how much is yours. So contextual AI, and Apple Intelligence is a great example of this. We'll be able to take things, time and dates and photos and messages, and relate the corpus of the whole of human experience in the generative AI with your specific context. That's a radical shift, but these are two totally different paradigms, contextual AI and generative AI. I don't think we can talk about this now because we've kind of run out of time, but what's interesting is there are radical consequences all the way through education. So, for example, this lady here might be speaking in Chinese. The other person might hear it in the timbre of her actual voice because, you know, with a little, once they fix up a little bit of latency, you won't need to learn another language ever again, right? There are radical possibilities. No, you will need to learn another language for the best of humanities reasons, because you want to be sensitive and to understand another person. They'll never be functional. There won't be, and cognitive reasons and cultural reasons, but there won't be functional reasons, right? That's a radical shift in language pedagogy. But ironically, Mary and I are going, after we go to Hong Kong, we're going to a university in India, which deals with Indigenous people, tribal people. Ironically, very small languages become instantly viable because they leverage big languages. It rather proves the argument about latent semantics. So if you're a speaker of a small language, you won't need to learn English. You can stay with your language and this stuff will make it. And they're, even though their corpora are small, their published corpora are small, they work incredibly well by leveraging big languages. It's a really interesting story. Then what's going to happen to the knowledge economy? Well, you know, no more management consultants because the machine can write the report. No more people in call centers because what's it going to mean for employment? There are potentially devastating consequences for labor-intensive knowledge economy jobs. But on the other hand, can we use this to deal with equality? Can we give everybody the best quality education, even if their school is poorly resourced? If you want to know,
teachers will be needed into the future because of the duty of care, right? And while kids are at school,
someone's got to look after the kids.
Continue to be needed.
But the answer is take the kids out to smell the roses, and as the machine can do all the boring stuff. That QR code there, on this Scholar page, we publish all our stuff all the time, so you can get all our publications there on that QR code. I'll come back to this in a second. But also we've set up this thing, Human-Centered AI Research Network, hc-ai.net. And we've just announced that now. But anyhow, that's how you can get all the papers. And look at that. Sorry, we took 8 minutes longer than we should have. But the long playing version, I can give you the YouTube link. And by the way, the long playing version is focused on schools and teachers. And we give school examples. I gave you a higher ed example there.
There was a slide there about all the things we need to do, but all of us, all of you, we need to create these tools because we cannot. These things did not come out of the academy. AI did not come out of the university. There's 6 white guys somewhere, now a couple of Chinese guys, who are controlling and inventing this stuff. But it didn't come from us, right? And we're trying to use it. But we have to think what matters to us, what are the values, and how to create the platforms and the tools and to collaborate in order to invent what's possible. And we're just trying to show you what we have done, because there's no point preaching this stuff if you can't translate it into practice. We took this model to schools, schools that had poor schools that had nothing, Rantoul, Rantoul.
Oh, you can't mention the name of schools. She'll go to hell for that.
And
delete that from the recording.
I'll mention that to you. And the kids were ducks to water to it, and they wanted to get their scores up. And the teachers, I have to tell you, the teachers were interested in helping shape the design of those tools. So.
By the way, a footnote too, if this is on the web and if anybody wants to use, it's in a space which is not visible at this stage, but if anybody wants to use it as a research tool, you're very welcome to use it. So anyhow, look, sorry, we've gone 10 minutes longer than we should have, so I'm very sorry, Wayne, we'll go to hell for that.
That's right, let me see the Q&A, thank you. Questions?
Oh, we got questions.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
10 minutes.
What's the youngest age group you've used this with so far, as far as writers?
Oh, we haven't, that particular version, the new one we haven't used below high school, but our bottom threshold notionally is grade 4. That's what we're thinking.
And we had the second part of our IES grant in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing could go wrong.
Our project officer was in tears talking to us. Doesn't know whether there'll be any more IES, but we had version 1, which we piloted, and then we had the second part, which was the implementation further down and up.
But actually, we're going to keep on going. We're lucky we got an internal university grant to keep on going as well. So we're
Question, if I may. I was really delighted to see the formative feedback that you had at the beginning of the entire writing experience. And I wondered where the reasoning models of AI might fit in, if there's some value in a kind of metacognitive use of the reasoning tool as either formative or summative feedback to show the students how the AI is reasoning.
How it's reasoning. So if you what you saw there with DeepSeek, when people did a DeepSeek search, we got the DeepSeek reasoning coming in. But one of our bigger projects, by the way, going forward, is to build a series of meta prompts which are tuned to education, but also to build, except for the reasoning tools are not visible except in DeepSeek, to build a set of reasoning tools that might work well for education.
But we could put them in the petals, Bill, in
the AI, not the assessment. This is actually building the reasoning. So they have this, it's a technical argument about chain of thought and agents. Well, they've built in generic ones, but we should build in specifically educational ones. So that's a project that we're hoping to get onto, actually. And look, the big answer, by the way, about the provenance of work, let's not call it cheating. Realistically, everyone's going to use AI all the time because it's so damn helpful. So with contextual AI, where we're capturing timestamps and keystrokes and all that darn stuff, we'll be able to see how much work the student did. And it may well be that the teacher sets a threshold. 80% of the work has to be yours, 50% has to be yours. But realistically, we're going to be using these tools all the time. So we've built this, the next phase of the project is this careful instrumentation where we can track which bits are AI and which bits are the student.
We have 160 still EDD students, doctoral students, and every single one of them is using it, right? But this process means that we can see how much they're using it, the peer feedback.
And it's transparent.
Particularly the students for whom English wasn't the first language, they were the first people to go and use it.
Right.
So we've already seen the transformation. So I couldn't keep writing, how much of this was AI? That's what I should do. How much of this is yours? We had a policy. But now we've built this interview. I don't have to ask, because we can see, we encourage it, and we can see, how much is the students' work, how much they draw on, and we have human moderation.
And also hopefully what they've learned from it as well. So because we keep multiple versions of things, we can see what they've learned from it as well.
So critical thinking still matters in relation to what you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing this platform. It's fascinating. So you mentioned collaborative opportunities. So I can totally see like peer feedback is possible. But what other collaborative opportunities have you seen? Have you tried?
We created culture of collaboration, right? It's all online, all flipped classrooms, right? But then we have synchronous sessions and we have collaborative advising sessions. So we built different kind of synchronous sessions with produce. And then
the question is in this environment, though.
Oh, no. Well, not in.
So in a way, to answer your question, the collaboration in this environment is peers, but also the machine becomes a collaborator. But the most important thing is it's not artificial intelligence, it's collective intelligence. It's human intelligence, which is in there because you've built the rubric, which is the knowledge framework, and you've built the knowledge base, which is the substantive topic domain. And that then tunes whatever it is you're doing. So in other words, there are two types of there's individual peer stuff. The teacher can be in there giving feedback as well, but then the AI is reconfigured as collective intelligence and also the teacher's intelligence because they've framed the whole space.
Yeah, but the human part does matter. They do form little groups themselves. And once a year, we bring them.
No, but thinking about the platform.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm just saying the collaboration is not only in the platform, but actually we need to do it for our students. So we bring them physically together as well.
But what other forms of collaboration were you thinking?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to see what collaboration, like the definition of collaboration when you've mentioned it. So I envision more so using this platform to provide peer feedback, right? That in itself is collaboration. Well, what I'm also hearing is that on a theoretical level, this AI or this platform itself is a collaborative partner with humans, right?
That's right.
So that is a second component.
Exactly.
And then the third part is the brick and mortar where the external, right? Like they do it in online, but also in class
Yep.
with an actual human present. So I asked that question because I'm noticing with my undergraduate students, I do give permission to use AI. However, I'm seeing the different layers of the use of AI, of just uploading the rubric and generate it, where the language is completely neutral, right? Because that's what, ChatGPT does. And then there's another group of students where they generate their ideas and use an iterative process, right? To improve or to add more human touch to it. That's the second group of students. And the third group is just for the linguistical purpose, they edit it. So, I mean, that's a little bit of context of the current situation that I'm in.
But what we're hoping is to build an environment where you give them all that tools and then one of the problems is you can't know what they've done. You're only inferring what they've done.
Right,
But, so that's the next phase of this where we're working
At a
on that now.
doctoral level, though, I can tell with the AI as used it every time.
But also sometimes you egregiously get it wrong.
Sometimes.
They get very, Mary says, I think AI did this, and they get really, really angry. No, don't accuse. So one of the problems about is false positives in the AI detectors
It's a
as well.
tricky area, but we have to get in there and get our hands dirty, trying to figure out how we make it work. And you've seen what guardrails we've put up. We're just demonstrating the kind of guardrails you need to put up in order to use it ethically and productively.
Thank you.
Maybe time for one quick short question. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
I got to give you back.